how to find the RFP that will best meet your needs. And now we are going to start going through the instructions for the narrative content as well as the review. I'm now going to turn it over to Christine Strohm, so she's going to lead us as we go forward.
Hello, everybody, and welcome. We will turn our videos off so the presentation is more stable. What I want to do, Angela, if you go to the next slide, please. Next, I want to focus today, the next, please, on what we do, what we have to do when we identify an RFA that we want to respond to, how to use that RFA to our advantage, and how to extract all the crucial information that we need to be successful with our submission. The RFAs provide a lot of information, typically, that we need to make the first steps. First thing is compliance, the hard requirements that we have to meet in order to be reviewed and considered for funding. The pieces that are implied in the RFA or in other places that they relate to that make our proposal more convincing, and the critical key words, key terms, key issues that we have to bring up in our and discuss in our proposal that will make it easy for reviewers to see what they are looking for and what they will value in terms of their ranking of our proposal. Today, we will use one of the most irritating requests for proposals, the SAS request, to show you how to navigate and use the RFA as a roadmap to success. The next, please. This is what it looks like. It's the 2024 request for proposals. It's due on June 6th. Altogether, there's $80 million available, and the floor for awards is $50,000. The ceiling is $10 million. Next, please. So, before we think about anything, whether what we want to do, how we want to do it, with whom we want to do it, we have to make sure that we're eligible for this funding. And in general, there are eligibility requirements in each RFA that pertain to institutional affiliations, to the principal investigators, and to project focus. The next, please. In our case, for the SAS, when we go to page 10, we are told that only integrated projects are eligible for this funding. And when we go one further, next please, Angela, we see that integrated projects are, in this case, colleges and universities, 1994 land grant institutions, and Hispanic serving agricultural colleges and universities. That information is relayed on page 20. So, in other words, when you open the electronic version of the RFA, you want to go into the table of contents first, click on eligibility, and read up on what you have to bring to the table in order to be considered for this funding. Next, please. The next thing we have to consider before we can start writing is our idea, the goal that we want to pursue here. Does that fit into the priorities of the USDA at this point in time? Why do I highlight this? These priorities change, and even in the same year, depending on the USDA program you want to apply to, priorities may be different. For us, the SAS strategic goals this year are food and nutrition security, strengthening the bioeconomy, and climate smart agriculture and forestry. Once you decide that you fit into this, we can take the next step. Angela, you wanted to step in here.
Yes. As we think about the priorities, there's always sub-priorities that are highlighted in the priorities. This is going to be critical as you are writing your first page of your narrative, because you really want to make sure that you look at these key words and make sure that there's alignment with your objectives and your outputs and outcomes from your project. So for the goal number 1, you could see local and regional food systems, nutrition sensitive, smart, climate smart agriculture, nutrition security, diet related health disparities. So think about your objectives and say, which one of these does it align with, and how can we put this wording into our RFP as we're writing our narrative?
All right, then we continue. The next thing before you start writing is make sure that there are no requirements in terms of match. These requirements also change depending on RFA. They can range from no match required at all to 100% match required, dollar for dollar, no exceptions. And then there's all kinds of gray areas in between. Here for the SAS, anybody who is in an institution of higher education is basically not required to bring match to the table. And everybody who is proposing something that is not commodity specific is also exempt from the match requirement. But always keep in mind, every RFA is different. And don't rely on what was the case a year or 2 or 3 ago. It may have changed for the same kind of program this year. Always check what is required this year. Angela, you have anything else to say to this?
Yes. If you have a match, and this is going to go into our budget webinar that will be later this month, it's going to be important that you highlight, because not everything can be considered a match. And matches, in my experience, can make a grant application extra challenging, because they really want to see in-kind money. They really want to see specifics. So we'll talk about that in our budget and budget justification webinar later. That's all.
All right, then let's go on. Next thing we have to make sure we have in place are all our registrations. You have to register on sam.gov. You have to obtain a unique entity identifier number, and you have to register in grants.gov. If you are faculty in an institution of higher education, all these things typically have been taken care of. If you are working for an NGO, for a company that's eligible to apply for these kind of grants, you will have to make sure that you obtain all these registrations. Don't procrastinate. Some of them can take a while. They are not instantaneous. Sometimes you have to wait for a week or 2 before you have your registration numbers. Anything else, Angela, that from your end, from the higher institution side, that people should be aware of here?
Just recognize, talk to your people early. That's early is going to be the key word with this.
Yeah. So now we know that we're eligible. We know that we can bring the match, or we don't have to bring a match. We know that our idea fits into the list of priorities this year. Now the RFA on page 24 tells us what all we have to put together to be complete and eligible for review by the review panel. In this case, it's the SF 424 R&R family of forms. That's a lot of forms. You have to write a project summary that goes into a template that's provided by the USDA and is uploaded separately. You have to write a project narrative. You have to prepare a document with all your references. You have to prepare a logic model. That is something that is separate from the narrative, and we will have a separate session on what goes into a meaningful logic model later in this series. You have to prepare a project management plan. You have to make a list of all your facilities and other resources that are relevant to the project that you are proposing here. Next. You have to prepare a data management plan that informs the reviewers about all the different kinds of data you're collecting, how you are securing them, how you're sharing them. All this has to go into this data management plan. And the USDA has actually an example for that you can use and modify and make it fit to your project. You have, in this case, you have to write a mentoring plan for grad students if they are involved in your project. You have to provide bio sketches for all your key personnel. Everybody in your key personnel list has to fill out a conflict of interest list and a current and pending list. You have to prepare a budget and you have to justify this budget. That's a lot of stuff. Angela?
But Christine, we have sessions on all of these topics. We have a session coming up on the SF series. We have sessions that will be later on about all of these documents, and we will provide examples of them for everybody to go. So we have webinars at, once again, 1 hour webinars all this month on specific topics.
Yes. Again, a word of warning. This long list of required components to your proposal is specific to the SAS call for proposals. It does not always look like this. You don't always need a mentoring plan. You don't always need a management plan. You don't always need a logic model. That's why it is so important to carefully go through the RFA, and pull out all the bits and pieces that you will have to complete in order to be compliant. So now we can go on. Then there is the issue of indirect cost, IDCs. I bring this up here because it is a requirement that they cannot exceed 30% of total federal funds. That's another topic that will be discussed and explained in more detail in our webinar on budgets that is later in the series. You want to say anything, Angela?
Nope, we're excited for that one.
Okay, and the same goes for the R&R budget. I put the link in here so you know where to go to find information on what it has to go in this budget and in which sequence they have to go in, what you can put in, what you cannot put in. That's all on this website. And again, a match if required. Will all be discussed in another session. Next. Last thing, proposals must be submitted electronically through grants.gov. There is no other means of submitting your proposal. That's all in our RFA right now. So, next. Now we can start writing. That's what we wanted to do from the very beginning, because we have an idea and we want to put it on paper and we want to get funding to make this all happen. Okay, next, please. Now the question becomes, well, what should this look like? How much space do I have? What can I do? What can I not do? And in general, your RFA will have a section that lays all this out. How many pages you have, what fonts you have to use, all these are in your RFA. In this case, there's nothing. Does no requirements presented in the RFA mean that I can do what I want? Well, that's a stupid question. Obviously not. they send us on a little side trip, road trip off our map to another resource here, and that is the 2024 Sustainable Agriculture Systems RFA additional information for Part 4, Paragraph C. Angela, if you want to take us there, that's this one. All right, so that's where we end up when we click on the link in the RFA. And now we're looking for instructions for narrative and font sizes and page. There's no obvious place where we find it until we get to the section on other information. And the second to last link here says AFRI SAS RFA additional information for Part 4, Paragraph C. That's what we want. And here we go. Here we have the details on what we can, what we should, and what we must do. So first thing we go, because we're thinking of project narrative now, we go to project narrative and see what they tell us. So project narrative, here we go. We have 18 pages. If you want to highlight that, Angela, not to exceed 18 pages, 12-point font, single line spacing, including all figures and tables. So no fudging here. Don't use a font size that is half a point smaller, or use font 9 in your figures and tables because that saves space. You don't want to project that you don't care about rules. You want to stick to the rules. Plus, if there's a really stickler in that review panel or in the program review, they may flag you for it. And it will create bias. If not, even they may send you back and not review what you send. So stick to the rules and make sure that all the information that you want to convey is conveyed in the right format. Now, the next thing here is project narrative pieces. What should be in there? If it is a resubmission, you have one extra page to address the concerns that the reviewers conveyed the last time they reviewed it. So you want to focus on the major issues that they saw and respond to them, tell them what you plan to do to address these concerns. So then we have an introduction. If we scroll down a little bit, I think there was an extra space, an extra place to go for our integrated projects. Here we go. I think specific project and grant types. See, this is what I meant with, this is a really aggravating RFA because it makes it so difficult. Here we go. We want to look at integrated project applications because only integrated project applications are admissible for the SAS call. Let's click on that. And here, oh no, this is evaluation. That's not what we wanted.
For this call, remember, we're just doing, they just have one narrative, but for the
okay.
Yes.
There's just one narrative.
Yeah.
Okay, then let's continue there. I didn't follow on my presentation here. I just look at this. So they tell us they want an introduction. Maybe, Angela, go back into the presentation, the next slide, because I extracted all this information. Here we go. 12-point margins, page limits. Next. Here I pulled out all the pieces that were listed in that extra information website. An introduction, a section on rationale and significance, a section on approach, additional information required for integrated projects, and if applicable, response to previous review. So as you saw when Angela clicked through this page, they actually give very specific and detailed instructions on the content that is expected to be under each section headline. I use these instructions to create subheadlines, to structure my proposal and make it easier for reviewers to follow along and see exactly where in the narrative we are. If you skip the next one and go to the following one. One more. This is what I would pull out of the instructions. Introduction should have a section on magnitude of the issues and significance to stakeholders, a background section where you summarize the body of knowledge, your past activities, preliminary results that you may have, and describe or create a context for the work that you want to do that highlights not only why it is important, but also what will be the pieces that you will contribute to the body of science, to our knowledge, that will make this valuable. Then there is the role of stakeholders in problem identification, and I didn't number it properly. I apologize. I will fix it before we upload it. And then a short section, typically, why the work should be performed at your institution. So that goes back to experience there, expertise in the team, key access to land, equipment are the things that should be listed under this section. Next, section 2, you have to provide a rationale and discuss the significance of your project. Concisely present why you choose this problem and why it is important enough to spend up to $10 million on it. The next part is very important. Clearly describe how your project and the goal that you want to achieve is aligned with specific priority areas of the program you are submitting to. Here for the SAS, the RFA actually tells us that they will not review your proposal if this relationship is not clearly outlined for the reviewers. So this is a very important part of your proposal. And although it is not always mentioned in the RFA, I would put this into every proposal that is to be submitted to the USDA to make that very clear to the reviewers why it fits there and how it contributes to the goals and priorities of the USDA. Next section under 2 is the long-range improvement in and sustainability. Oh, probably missed some word. Improvement in sustainability. Highlight your novel ideas and identify the uniqueness of your contribution to the science here. Next is the approach section. You want to clearly identify all your objectives, and hopefully you can associate your objectives with the problems that you want to solve that you have identified earlier. That you have to include the statement of objectives or specific aims and make it clear to the readers, the reviewers, why you picked them and how they fit together with the aim of reaching your ultimate goal in solving a specific problem. Reviewers want to see what kind of methods you use, what procedures, methodology you will apply. And we will have a next slide that shows you what that means. Also here, a project timetable. And that's not just a standard Gantt chart, but it should list all your objectives year by year for the entire project, And it should also hopefully provide identification of milestones and deliverables that you will bring over the period of funding. So if we go to the next slide, that actually lists all the things that are in this additional information document relating to methods. What should this section include? And here you see a lot. Stakeholder involvement, all the project activities by objective and then as tasks, techniques, including their feasibility and rationale, expected results, in other words, deliverables, how extension and education activities will be evaluated. So keep that in mind. If you want a lot of money from the USDA, they typically expect independent evaluation. That doesn't mean external, outside of your institution, but independent of your project. Evaluation cannot be done by somebody who is a PI, co-PI, or senior personnel on your project. How the data you create or collect will be analyzed and interpreted, communication plans, and that is something that's often overlooked. You tell reviewers what you see as potential risks, pitfalls that you may encounter, and what strategies you have to overcome them. If you don't offer this to reviewers, they will start digging and they will come up with something that you will not have addressed in your proposal. So always offer limitations or pitfalls to show reviewers that you thought your project through and that you're conscious of the risks that you're running with the way you go about your project. The next thing are the review criteria. These are not mandatory things. These are not requirements, but these are the questions that reviewers are presented with and for which reviewers will look for answers. Angela, if you want to click on that link. And again, in many standard RFAs, these review criteria are at the end of the RFA. You do not have to go through these 2, 3, 4 loops to find them. They are listed in your RFA. Here, they're not. They send us to this link. And here we go. And this was the one that was separated into the different projects. Angela, I think you wanted to say something here.
Yes. So like Dr. Strohm was saying, that first we look at the RFA to see what the reviewers have to comment on. So being on a research on a panel, we have specific questions that are in these that we have to address. But one thing that I love about this RFP is it breaks it down. If you have a research only project, these are the research criteria. If you have an education only one, here are the criteria. If you have an integrated project, then here are the criteria. So each of these have different, when you click on them, have different wording of expectations that the reviewers have to make comments on related to your proposal. So it's important for you to go ahead when you say, I'm going to do an integrated project, to go to this review criteria and have someone else read your proposal and look at these criteria and say, oh, you did not clearly describe this methods or this feasibility plan. So that's why I want to mention that depending upon the type of project, you need to look at the evaluation criteria. And every RFP is different with how they're reviewing. Some have point systems associated with it. Others have bigger categories that have to be spoken to. But as a reviewer, this is what we're provided for ranking and putting a number value to your project.
Yeah, it's often number values or percentage values. 10% of the score is obtained in section 1. 25% of the score can be reached in the method section, for instance. So that is an important information for you because it also tells you how much space in your 18 pages you should dedicate to a certain section. If it only brings you 5% of the overall score, you shouldn't spend more than 5% of your page limit on this topic. So here you can tell integrated project applications, first thing they go towards is merit. And that's typically scientific merit. Is your work designed to fill gaps in knowledge? Will what you do lead to an improvement in whatever the priorities are? And when you go through this, you also see where the reviewers will look, although as a writer, as a proposal writer, you wouldn't think they would. If you scroll up a little bit, Angela, you see they look at the data management plan. That is something that most people don't really spend much time on. They have a canned document that is attached to every proposal, never changes, and may cost you points. Because once reviewers look at it and they say, oh, that's obviously not tailored to this project, you lost points and you went down in the ranking. So look at these lists very carefully and make sure that you address every single one of these points in a way that is clear and obvious to reviewers. So the next thing here is qualification of project personnel. They look at whether the roles of everybody are clearly defined, everybody knows what they're supposed to do, what they're responsible for, that they have the expertise to actually perform the tasks they're supposed to perform, that there is enough institutional capacity. If your project promises to do, I don't know, a plant growing trial on 500 acres, and your institution doesn't have that much land to even grow anything, that reviewers will notice. Project management, including time allocated for the specific objectives that you have identified, that the budget clearly allocates sufficient resources to every part, not just the research part of your proposal. In other words, if you promise to do a lot of outreach and broadening participation, but you allocate very little money to it, reviewers will question it and your ranking may go down. So we go through project relevance. And again, this is specific to the SAS call. Other calls will have different review criteria that are really tailored to each of these programs. Okay. Next one. I don't think we have much more. We went there already. Yep. Angela, you take it over.
So that is our proposal for how to extract. Now, we've mentioned a lot that about that we have other webinars. We have some previous webinars. And one thing that I want to mention is we're extracting from a very specific, complex RFP, but we do have already on our website under our webinar on demand a simpler RFP that we've gone through and extracted information from. So you might want to go and review that one that's already on demand through our YouTube channel that will give you another example of how to extract, as well as we have a lot of other more specific, shorter presentations on our website already. And these are all recorded and available for you. I wanted to bring up again all of the webinar series and topics. As we went through this, you heard a lot of different things like a data management plan and a mentor plan and how to write your first page and how to do a logic model. We have specific sessions that are on those so that you can learn. We'll provide examples of them. All this will be on our website. as well as learning from rejections from previous proposals and reworking those. We also want to mention that we do have our summer grant writing accountability group. We will be providing more information about that here in a week or two, but it'll be on Wednesdays from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m., where we will hold you accountable for what your grant writing goals are. But we will also be available to help you think through ideas, redesign, update grant applications, determine what grant opportunities might be present. So we have a lot of knowledge there. So with that, we are going to bring it open to questions. We're going to stop the recording and we're going to ask for questions.